North Bay Elementary. Thanks everyone for coming. Looks like we have a great turnout. We'll have a call to order for the meeting. And now we'll go ahead and go with the Pledge of Allegiance. If we can all stand and face the flag. Stand on our heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Next, we have roll call. I see in person we have Julie Thies, Mary Schilling, myself, Jim Jordan, and we have Christina Simpson coming to us via Zoom from Salem, Oregon. Thank you, Christina. Good. So we have a quorum. We've got 4 here. Let's see. Next item we have agenda changes / approval of agenda. Do I have a motion from another board member to approve the agenda?
I'll make the motion to approve the agenda.
And we have thank you. We have approval and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, the agenda is approved. We got a pretty full agenda. We have, I think, a total of 16 items. Okay, next up on the agenda we have public participation. This is kind of a canned paragraph I'll read for everyone. The board welcomes comments and questions from the public. If you wish to address the board, please fill out a public participation sheet available at the table over there and give it to the board secretary. That Ben is right here now. We ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. If more than one person will be addressing the same topic, we ask that you appoint a spokesperson to speak to the group. Speakers may offer objective criticism of school board operations and programs, but the board will not hear comments regarding individual school personnel. And when you speak, you can approach the podium there, and please take your mask off so we can hear you. And with that, I think, let me go to we'll take them in the order. We've got 3. Take them in the order they came. I'm going to have Mr. J.J. Wacom. He goes by J.J.
Yes. I would like to make a formal request for junior high 6th grade math and science syllabus for my granddaughter. If no syllabus is available, I would like the same thing as a class outline. I am more than willing to pay for the time, paper, and ink to produce those. You have my phone number. Please call me when I could pick it up at the junior high office. Any questions?
None for me.
Have you made your request to the school?
Say again?
Have you made a request to the school?
I still can't understand you. My hearing aids.
Have you made a request to the middle school?
No, sir, because I wished the school board to hear the request as well.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have Sammy Pearson.
Sammy Pearson, North Bend. My comments tonight deal with the statement about local control for masks. Once again, the board has produced a poorly written public document, just a bunch of fluff with no real meaning, and quoting people who have zero health care and science experience. There's no definition of what local control is in the document. Are we just going to pull someone off the street and, hey, they're local, they can make the call? Or are we relying on elected officials who have no medical background, let alone virology experience? So who is it going to be? If you're going to suggest local control, the least you could do is state that it will be relied on the county health department, the people who actually have training and knowledge.
Thank you, Sammy Pearson. And the last public comment we have this evening, Rob Taylor.
Hi, my name is Rob Taylor. I'm from Bandon, and the only reason I'm here tonight, here in North Bend, is I'm not a taxpayer. I don't live in your district, but I've been contacted by several employees of the district, and I've been contacted by several families. Last month, I sent you information on some of the comments I have received, and I've continued to receive those comments. We intended to attend this meeting last month, but unfortunately, there was a problem because somebody reported that I was a domestic terrorist to the FBI, and the FBI warned you that a large crowd might show up. And as you see, there's not a large crowd of rowdy people here because many of them were afraid to be labeled as domestic terrorists. And that's why some of the families have asked me to come and speak about the reasons that the bond failed. The reasons the bond failed is, number one, the economy. The government has shut down many of the businesses last year, and it took a while to get those businesses opened up, and they're still not fully opened up. And the businesses that have survived are now competing against the unemployment department for their employees. So that's one of the contributing factors. The second contributing factor is the governor's mandates. We are only one of 9 states that have these mask mandates for our states. In fact, we are one of the most toughest on our mask mandates, and it's one of the most regulatory. And it's ridiculous. It's time we stop this. Other states are going just fine having students show up to school without their mask, and there are many states who are going completely maskless, and their figures on any of their statistics is no worse than what we're suffering here. So a lot of people were upset about that. They're upset about the vaccine mandates. The teachers complained about that. Thirdly, is the leadership. Leadership has now been dwindled because a lot of people do not believe that leadership is what we would call in line with the community, and I think the bond failure shows that. There are teachers who have complained to me about your superintendent, about some of his activities as far as his teaching ideological propaganda such as critical race theory and other such ideologies. This is coming from the staff, not me. I'm just here as a messenger to tell you the complaints that I've dealt with. And the only reason I'm here is because I've never had this many people call me about a district. So I think you need to look at your superintendent and the leadership, because I think there are some reasons why this may fail or cause the failing of your bond measure. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry?
More text.
I still didn't hear you, ma'am.
Please don't make personal attacks.
I apologize. I'll just refer to the leadership. The leadership has failed as far as what people have seen, and that's the 3 reasons this bond measure has failed. You need to talk to people because they're afraid to show up, the employees, because they're afraid of retaliation. And once again, that comes from the retaliation they're afraid of from the leadership. So that's something you're going to look into. This isn't something I'm making up, just woke up one day and decided to tell you. This is something has been related to me by not just 1, 2, but over a dozen people who work for you and families themselves. And I want to thank you for allowing me the time.
Okay. Thank you, Rob Taylor. Okay, moving on, item number 4, communications. 4A, board reports and communication. Silence means none. So moving on, 4B, student representatives to the board. Maggie Green and Nevaeh Adara?
All right, hello. So we're the North Bend High School student representatives. We've got a few things to just share with you about what's been going on at the high school. So in terms of activities, our drama department will present Alice in Wonderland on Friday, November 12th at 7 p.m. and the 13th and 14th at 2. And then the following weekend on Friday, November 19th at 7 p.m. as well, and the 20th at 2 o'clock. All performances will happen in the North Bend High School cafeteria. We had our first choir concert of the year on October 26th in the North Bend High School cafeteria. And in terms of other things in our music program, Miss Yester will be taking 8 students to the Western Invitational Band Conference, otherwise known as WIBIC, from November 19th to the 22nd. We had our homecoming dance on October 16th, and that was attended by over 400 students. It took place in the courtyard at North Bend High School, and we want to thank David Hanna of Big Tents, Rents, and Events for giving us a great deal on the use of a 30-foot by 40-foot tent. Mr. Forrester says that it was the best dance he's been at since he's been at North Bend High School, and the North Bend High School senior parents are considering sponsoring a winter formal at the end of this term. On October 13th, North Bend High School students took the Peace Out in the gymnasium, and over 100 students took part in that, which was pretty cool. On October 20th, North Bend High School held senior parent night, which was a chance to have senior students and their parents come listen and learn about things like ordering caps and gowns, how to get involved in various senior parent projects, and what to expect in coming months for our senior students. Today, our student council met and discussed some things that we think can help with the school climate at North Bend High School. Each student council class will be coming up with fun activities for the week. These include things like a movie night, ways to honor our faculty and staff, and a Christmas assembly and daily scavenger hunt for prizes. We also have 2 new clubs that started at North Bend High School this year. The Culture Club is led by Mr. Helland and is there to create a community where everyone feels empowered and included. Mrs. Jones also started the Medial Explorers Club and is for anyone interested in the medical field. All of our fall sports seasons are now over. One bright spot is that all of our varsity teams received at least a combined 3.0 GPA or higher. One highlight for them was that both of them defeated Marshfield last week. The girls won 7-0 and the boys won 3-2. Our volleyball team had an amazing season, finishing with a record of 21 wins and 2 losses. They won North Bend High School's first ever Midwestern League Volleyball Championship. In the playoffs, they defeated St. Helens last Saturday, but unfortunately lost to Wilsonville on Tuesday night. Coach Sawyer and her team will be honored by the City of North Bend on November 9th. Our football field was completed on October 15th, just in time for our game with Willamette High School. Our football team won the game, which was also homecoming night. Our team was very young this year, but gained a lot of great experience. Our JV team had a record of 7 wins and 1 loss, so our future is bright. Our cross-country teams finished the season at the district meet last week. Our girls were 6th and our boys were 7th. Winter sports season starts on November 15th. Any questions about any of that?
That was wonderful. Thank you so much for the update.
Thank you, ladies. Okay, association reports. 4C, North Bend Educational Association report. Presenter, Christina Geierman, NBEA President.
Thanks. It's always great to talk to you guys. In my last address to you, I talked about how your teachers were burned out and how educators are struggling with preparing content for students on quarantine and the abnormal student behavior we're experiencing after the year's gap in after the year of COVID education. So we're finally starting to have a downward trend in COVID cases. I am so excited about that, but we do still have many students with students out in quarantine. And the behaviors haven't gotten any better, but we've recognized that there is a problem. And I'm very pleased to say that we have a committee of teachers, administrators, and district employees working together to try to come up with some solutions. And we're going to be starting things at the building level, because what is a good solution to help a first grader isn't necessarily going to work at the high school. So I'm hoping that at my next address to you, I'll be able to share some positive things that have come out of that. So Off-task behavior and absent students have contributed to our teachers feeling burnt out, but they're not the only factors. Are you guys familiar with the word differentiation? Because that's another one like equity that I'd never heard before I became a teacher. So even in a normal year, a fourth grade classroom would have some students, most of the students would be reading at a fourth grade level. That's how they figured that out. But some of the students would be a bit behind in reading at the third grade level, and a few advanced ones would be at the fifth grade level. A good teacher differentiates their work, giving slightly different assignments to support the low readers and challenge the high readers. But this year, the spread of abilities in our classrooms has gotten a lot wider than we've ever encountered before. A fourth grade teacher might have students reading at the first grade level through the fifth grade level, instead of what they're used to and what they have curriculum to support. So our curriculum no longer fits most of our students, and we're having to write new things. Before I go to bed tonight, I have to write a Kahoot for my general biology class. These are the best and brightest kids in the school, but last year, the stuff they were supposed to learn about genetics didn't really sink in. So all of this takes time, and teachers are having to do this at home in the evenings and on our weekends. Now, you're probably thinking, yeah, we do have a daily prep period, and this is guaranteed for all teachers, so why aren't we writing the new content at that time? Well, we're often not getting our prep periods. For me, it's been about once per week that I don't get mine, and that's because we have more teachers calling in sick than ever before. In past years, we'd come to school if we had a cold and tough it out, because writing subnotes is awful. But now we have to follow the CDC guidelines and stay home while we're sick. This is probably better for our long-term health as humans, but it's been very tough to find substitutes this year. A lot of people left the subpool. In secondary schools, teachers are subbing for their peers on their prep. I got to teach about interest rates the other day. It was very exciting for all involved. We're getting paid for this, so that's good, but it makes for an extremely busy day. And several of the teachers at our high school are getting paid to teach an extra class on their prep, so we don't have to hire additional staff, especially finding a magic person that can teach Spanish and math and English or something like that. So because of this, it's more time, and we're having a lot of kids coming in on our lunches to help that need tutoring and need to retake tests. But we are humans, and we can't really work all day, every day, take homework on top of it, and not feel overwhelmed and burned out. And the problem's looking a little bit different at the elementary level. This room hasn't been used for its proper function all year because of COVID restrictions, and that's not the fault of our administrators. Due to COVID, students eat breakfast and lunch in their classrooms. The janitors are trying to sneak in while teachers are teaching to pull the trash during the day, but cleaning up the spills, getting chocolate milk off the walls, and wiping down desks are now what teachers do. I didn't realize how bad this problem was until I visited my husband and his third grade colleagues when lunch included raisins. That was bad. It was like the monkey enclosure at the zoo. Yeah, you wouldn't think that was raisins. So this is why I'm trying to be kind of funny, because I want you guys to listen, and I want you to know that I really care about this, and I really do care about my colleagues. But this is why we are burned out. And I know you're tired of me hearing about problems and how bad everything is, but I didn't want to come to you and share just the high points when I'm having people crying at union meetings and people coming to me and I'm having to talk them out of quitting their jobs. So I would like to end on something positive. Thanks to the hard work of Tim Kreider and the folks at the district office, the mentor positions are now posted on our district website, and we'll be matching our first-in-year teachers with mentor teachers soon. I think this is going to be a big positive step forward for training our new staff and for getting them to stick around for more years. So thank you very much for listening, guys.
Thank you, Christina. Okay.
Thank you, Christina.
Item 4D, Superintendent Report, Kevin Bogatin.
Thank you. I have quite a few things to share, and I think our students shared a few of those as well. So I appreciate them being here tonight. It's nice to have some student voices here. Well, so on Tuesday, November 3rd, our district school facility bond measure failed by just over 700 votes. This is not the news we wanted to hear, but the voters of our district have spoken, and we appreciate their participation in this special election. I want to thank the hard work of the Bond Planning Committee and everyone who participated in the organizing and planning that led up to this measure. In addition, I want to thank the group organizing the Yes for North Bend Schools. This grassroots Vote Yes effort was led by dedicated parents and citizens of North Bend who worked tirelessly to support this effort. While the efforts came up short, the needs of our schools don't go away. Our aging school facilities continue to place a burden on our maintenance teams, and we must seek a way to address these needs. In fact, just this week, we had no hot water due to the leakage of old plumbing and pipes at a couple of our different buildings. It is our duty to provide warm, safe, and dry schools for all North Bend students. However, the voice of our voters have been heard, and we're listening. Our team will revisit this bond package and look at a variety of options to improve our schools while being sensitive to the feedback of our voters. We will have more information in the coming weeks as we work towards a solution that keeps kids safe but is amenable to our voters. Again, a huge thank you to everyone who worked so hard to create the bond proposal. Win or lose, those efforts are appreciated and will continue to serve the district's long-term facility needs. November is Native American Heritage Month, and the North Bend School District is celebrating the rich and diverse cultures, traditions, and histories, and to acknowledge the important contributions of Native people. Locally, we celebrate the Confederated Tribes of the Coos, Lower Umpqua, and Sayusla Indians, as well as the Coquille Indian Tribe. With the implementation of Senate Bill 13, Tribal History, Shared History, our students will be exploring Oregon's rich history. One example is examining the Lewis and Clark expedition of 1804 to 1806, which was of great consequence for the United States, the future state of Oregon, and the vast numbers of indigenous people who had been living in the American West for thousands of years. Our students will explore how historical events can be viewed and interpreted differently by different people, and why some stories about historical events can dominate or exclude others. Students will also learn details about the Lewis and Clark expedition that provide a fuller picture of Native American contributions to the journey and its long-term impact on indigenous people, specifically in Oregon. For example, the Corps of Discovery crossed paths with more than 50 tribes whose generosity, hospitality, and forbearance enabled the Corps to complete the voyage from St. Louis to the Pacific Ocean and back with minimal hostilities and no deaths except one due to appendicitis. This success would not have been possible without the contributions of Native people, as Lewis and Clark and other Corps members attested to in their journals. On September 14th, there were 72 new COVID cases in Coos County, and the 7-day average was 50. In the last month, we've seen these numbers drop, and on November 2nd of this 2021, the county saw 24 new cases with a 7-day average of 17. Clearly, we are headed in the right direction. We are also trying to get things back to normal as we move lunch back into the cafeteria at the elementary here in the next couple of weeks. We will also moving back to walk to read model, where students will get more individualized attention and support also here at the elementary level. Since our last board meeting, we've passed the deadline for our staff to show proof of vaccination or have an approved medical or religious exception with little impact on our day-to-day operations. This week, the CDC announced the recommendations that 5 to 11-year-olds be vaccinated against COVID-19 with the Pfizer-BioNTech pediatric vaccine. Distribution of pediatric vaccinations across the country started this week, with plans to scale up to full capacity starting in the week of November 8th. In October, the district participated in a local flu clinic at our high school campus. As you might recall, Blake Crane, a Marshfield High School student, class of 2021, died on February 17, 2020, after suffering serious complications of the flu. In memory of Blake, the Coos Bay School District, in coordination with the Waterfall Community Health Clinic and Center and the Families Fighting Flu, teamed up to provide a mobile health bus with the goal of providing the flu shot to as many as possible in Coos County. 80% of pediatric flu deaths are among children who are not vaccinated against flu, and children have the most infections of any age group. When the district agreed to have the clinic on site, it was with the intention of supporting the flu clinic in memory of Blake Crane, not providing access to COVID-19 vaccinations. This summer, I indicated that the district had no plan to offer COVID vaccination clinics in the fall at our school campus. However, it didn't cross my mind that the mobile health bus would have access to not only the flu shots, but would also provide other health care as needed or requested, including the COVID-19 vaccination. According to health officials, no students or adults received that vaccination during the flu shot clinic at the high school. Our staff are asking for easy access to the flu shot, and we are currently coordinating with local health organizations to provide access on site. It is very likely that our local health department and other agencies will also be reaching out to us to provide easy access to the pediatric COVID-19 vaccination at school sites. Parental permission is required to access this pediatric vaccination, and we are currently planning on having access at North Bay as part of the Waterfall Clinic, and we are planning to have a clinic and access at Hillcrest in the coming weeks. The district is not planning on having any COVID-19 specific clinics at the middle school or high school. We are 2 months into the school year, and I think we're all hoping for things to be back to normal by now. Student behavior has been negatively impacted by a lot of factors, including mandatory masks, adjusting back to full day instruction, and the ongoing adjustment that academic needs and diverse student population. These factors are taking a toll on our teachers, our classified staff, and administration. The past 2 weeks, my administrative team has met with representatives to fully understand the issues, including an increase of extreme student behaviors, a lack of available substitutes, and a need for more time to work on school symptoms. We brainstormed ways to address some of these issues. At our December meeting, representatives from this team would like to present some ideas for the board to consider for implementation in the winter and spring trimesters, including the expanding early release time and some additional work days. We are making an immediate adjustment in the winter term that will move our early release days from Wednesdays to Fridays. These teams will look forward to sharing more details on December 9th. I want to congratulate North Bend High School senior Haley Reeves on being crowned Miss Flame 2021 at last Friday night's home football game. Miss Flame Week is a tradition that dates back to a partnership forged in 1958 between the North Bend High School and the North Bend Fire Department to bring attention to fire prevention and safety. After a 2-year hiatus caused by the pandemic, Miss Flame Week returned to North Bend High School leading up to Friday night's event. The 21 Miss Flame Court, Haley Reeves, Katie Tilley, Kaea Morris, and Olivia Knutson got daily escorts to school by some selfless public servants that you will ever encounter. Midweek, the court also got treated to homemade firehouse lunch at North Bend Fire Station number 1, and the week-long event culminated Friday night with the crowning of Haley Reeves by Sparky the Fire Dog. I also want to congratulate our Midwestern League champion North Bend High School volleyball team for its outstanding season. Coach Sawyer and the Bulldogs made it to the quarterfinals of the OSAA state tournament. I know I can speak for the board of how proud we are of this group of athletes and their accomplishments on the court and in the classroom. The Midwestern League also recognized the accomplishments of this group. Bridget Gould was named First Team All-League and the Conference Player of the Year. Olivia Knutson and Maya Massey were named Second Team All-League. Peyton Marshall was named Honorable Mention All-League. And Coach Summer Sawyer was named Co-Coach of the Year, along with the Churchill High School coach. This team will be recognized by our mayor, as you heard earlier, on the 9th of November. Again, congratulations to this outstanding season. Go Bulldogs. And finally, so I am about done. In October, we celebrated National Principal Month, and while acknowledging our principals, I failed to add them in my report in October. So tonight I'd like to thank and honor our high school principals, Daryl Johnson, principal at North Bend High School, Jake Smith, our principal at Bridges, John Davison, our principal at North Bend Middle School, Wade Lester and Cullen Reeves, vice principals at the middle school, Stacia Fletcher, our principal at Hillcrest Elementary, and Dana Cahill, principal here at North Bay Elementary. In October, I delivered some goodies to each administrator in a little red wagon with the following poem entitled The Little Red Wagon by Margaret Catter. Some days we skip along, pulling our wagons with great confidence, so full of energy that the load seems light. Some days the load seems heavy and we need someone to help us pull our wagons over the bumps in the road. Some days we are just tired. We sit in our wagons and let someone else pull us along for a while. And some days it's kind of nice to share our little red wagons with a friend. As you might think about yesterday and make plans for tomorrow, keep in mind that there will be times when you can help pull someone's little red wagon for a while. After all, helping to pull each other's little red wagon is what makes it possible to face the challenges the day brings.
Thank you, Kevin. Next up, agenda item 5, action consent agenda items. Do I hear a motion to accept the consent agenda that is essentially all board minutes? Is there a motion?
I make a motion to accept.
I don't know if this is the one where I seen that there was, we needed to make some corrections. Hang on. I thought there was some, I I don't know where my notes went. Anyway, I don't know where they are. I think they're fine. I don't remember where I put my notes. But there was some spelling errors on some people's names. It's not,
Okay.
it probably be addressed later. I
Okay.
just- If we accept it now, that, I don't think we have to go back and, we can address.
So we had a
spelling
motion. Was there a second?
Christina seconded.
Okay, great, okay. So all in favor of accepting the consent agenda items, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Kristen. Okay, unanimous. All right, thank you. Item 6, Student Investment Account 2020 to 2021 Annual Report. Kevin Bogatin.
Yeah, so I'm going to share about this tonight, and I have some slides to share with you. So, as you recall, the Student Success Packs a couple years ago, this was our investment. This is the annual report for last school year, and our initial allocation was reduced by 70%, and we had the whole pandemic and the issue, and so the district investment is the $631,000. The purpose of that investment account was really twofold, and this was again directed as part of that law: meet students' mental health behavior needs and increase academic achievement and reduce academic disparities. They had also some guidance, and our plans needed to fall within this sort of 4 buckets: class size, well-rounded education, instructional time, and health and safety. So again, as long as your proposal and plan fell into these, our plans were approved. From a district level, we ended up creating really some clear district goals out of this. Again, increasing reading achievement, including reducing academic disparities for our students who experience poverty, our students with disabilities, and students from underserved race and ethnicities. We also want to improve mathematics achievement, ensuring all of our students complete algebra by the end of 9th grade, and create school culture that addresses safety needs and the social emotional needs of our students. And a couple other goals: develop and improve multiple pathways to graduation that link CTE programs and post-high school success. And finally, build and develop diversity inclusion strategies into our instructional core work with our students, teachers, and content to create a strong foundation to support students. So our investments, and again, the report really goes into more of the details, but these investments were K-2 class size reduction, elementary literacy specialist, support for behavioral after-school support, Character Strong, our social emotional curriculum that was implemented at elementary and middle school. We also have support specialists at each school, so either a counselor or a certified member that supports on the social emotional, really behavioral support within the classroom. We have extended day opportunities that were in this grant, safety and security upgrades, so that's including some access controls, fencing, signage, lighting, which was again a big priority of our committee as well as board work. So we ended up with really a theory of action, right? If we implement this at A, then we do these things. We improve K-3 literacy and reports. We improve graduation. Obviously the pandemic has impacted, because these district outcomes, again, ideally match the investments. So we have kind of a shortage of data. We have a shortage of kind of what's the impact of these resources, and it's more anecdotal. And so you see the annual report in here really asking these kinds of questions. What were the positive impacts during the last school year? So during a year where you saw elementary kids in a partial day hybrid, you saw middle school and high school not attend school until midway towards the end of the year after the winter break. But our focus is again on social emotional behavioral, so those counselors were there and present, connecting with families, reaching out, trying to fill in those gaps. We did invest in lower class sizes, which again, I think if you talk to a kindergarten teacher would say that definitely helped. Even last year in the pandemic, while kids were there shorter, having smaller groups allowed for them to have more individualized instruction. Again, we had investments in this also for ELA support. This annual report asks, like, what barriers did we face, or impediments or challenges? And again, prioritizing, so a 70% reduction. We went into last year thinking we were gonna have $2 million to spend on these investments. And ultimately, it was a portion of that. So how do you prioritize and what will make the biggest impact in the midst of a pandemic as well? And the other part that has been a huge challenge is just filling positions. So yes, you can have an open position, but we want high quality, trained folks, or people that again, are from this community, who are invested in this community, and who will continue to give back. And so again, just having open positions has been a challenge as part of this as well. Another one was, what are the successes and challenges with maintaining family engagement? And I would say this pandemic created challenges, right? So not being able to enter into your child's school very easily creates certainly barriers. It also created some opportunities. I was hearing from our teachers and our administrators where there were a lot of parent to teacher conversations, and there was some regular support around how do we support kids in this pandemic. And so that investment in school-family relationships began, and I think it's one of those that we saw we need to continue to focus on in the coming years. And then how did we prioritize? And again, our team came together and looked at this, again, with different stakeholders and prioritizing. Again, we knew this pandemic was creating challenges around just behavior, social, emotional, just withdrawing from school, not being able to see their friends. So that was a priority, as well as, again, lowering class size, especially at the early grade levels, was a priority. And you saw that then, the majority of investment in these areas. My report goes into a little bit more detail. Again, it's a fairly broad academic, just a report around, it doesn't have a lot of data, but we don't have data to share in these. That is the goal as we move forward, of tying academic outcomes to these SAA, and that we start to see it make a difference, especially as more and more money is invested into these resources. So yeah, I will take your questions, and there's an opportunity for the public to participate also in the public hearing part of this.
I had a question about number 5, Character Strong. I'm really interested in that curriculum, and so hopefully maybe next month somebody can come and speak about the traits and the
So we've been doing Character Strong. This is maybe our second year. Again, with the pandemic, they've done some training and beginning to implement that. We definitely have some folks from our counselors and staff that could definitely come and talk to that. So it is, we can add that to the agenda, and I'm sure Jim is making note of that. So we'll make sure we add that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is that strictly an elementary school program, or does that go to middle school?
I
and high
believe
school?
now it's K-12, and I'm looking at Nathan, and it began at our elementary level, so they began it first, and I think more recently our high school. It was really adopted, I think, initially nationwide as really an intervention, social emotional intervention for high school, and high schools have seen great results with that program. So I'm looking forward to hearing how the high school is addressing that and how they might see some impacts in the coming. So I'll be just as interested in that presentation. Any other questions about SAA? And then I think we have an opportunity for a hearing or for public participation in this agenda item, correct?
Sure. If there's any comments about Character Strong, yeah, go ahead.
Or Character Strong, or anything in this
Anything
SAA
covered,
plan from
sure.
the annual report. We'll come back and share. I'll have them. We'll at next month's meeting. So if you stay tuned on that, we can get some information. If you contact the school, we can get some to you. They can present, because I probably don't have the actual enough good quality information at this particular point. There is a website. You can get some information. There's some kind of videos you see a little bit. I think it's characterstrong.org. Does that sound right? .com. Other questions, SAA questions or comments from our public? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this law was passed specifically to address sort of historically underserved families across the district. So it could be students with disabilities, students from poverty, students from underserved race ethnicities. So our second language students, so them and their families. So how is our school meeting their needs? So a portion of, like, these resources are really designed to help bridge that gap and to help support and offer additional support. So that's the focal families. I think for a community like North Bend, we really, it's been, yes, we want input from different groups. We also are really interested in input across our district. We know we have a lot of families in need. And so there's really these investments aren't specific to any specific group. We're looking at a tutoring center at the high school implementing this year. That's part of our grant this year. That is identified to really focus on some students who have gaps, second language students that have gaps in English language. So that tutoring can be used to help support that group of students, but it'll be available to students across our all different groups. So does that help?
You had mentioned the early release movie from Wednesday to Friday.
Yeah.
Is there, not that I disagree, but I was curious, why and when?
Well, so the why is to really, well, we're looking at trying to really address the ongoing stresses of our classroom teachers and provide a little bit more continuity and time. So one, we're looking at expanding that time. Again, I'll give you a little preview of what's coming in, I think in December, is moving that from 1 hour to 2 hour after the January break. In December, we've talked about moving it to Friday, leaving it at an hour. One of those Fridays is in the second trimester is the Friday before winter break. So we feel like that probably would be pretty acceptable for most families and for probably most of our teachers. The why is, again, the Friday makes it a little bit easier. We're also adding some days where there will be work days, and so it's trying to have some time where we won't have students in class, working with some of our partners. So the days we were looking at match in combination and align with Coos Bay. And so Coos Bay has a series of Fridays that they made some changes in September. So we're moving to be in alignment with Coos Bay. And so you see the Fridays that we've identified where there are no student days. Coos Bay also has those days. So we're hoping childcare opportunities with Boys and Girls Club and locally will help bridge some of that gap. And really the need comes down to when we brainstorm solutions to increasing behavior, stress for teachers, there was a lot of, well, we need more time to gather, we need more time to plan, we need time to look at data and figure out what's going on. We need to rewrite some of our student behavior plans. We need to reassess how we're doing cafeteria or lunch. And so they just need more time, and those Fridays and having a little bit extended time would provide that. Again, we felt like if we're going to extend the time, probably aligning it to a little bit longer, the Friday to the weekend, not the best time for our staff. They're probably not most productive on a Friday afternoon, but I felt like if we're asking for that from our community, it felt like a good trade-off. So that's a little preview into probably what you're going to hear in December as well, but a little insight into that.
Okay, thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Next item is Agenda Item 7, 2021 COVID-19 Memorandum of Understanding, North Bend Education Association and Oregon School Employees Association. This is an action item. Kevin Bogatin. And Tim.
Actually, this is Tim.
Tim.
I was trying to get that on there. Hang on one second. How do I stop? Why is it sharing that? Oh, here we go. Sorry. I'm trying to get the screen so it doesn't show that and shows just on here, but I can't. No, stop share. That's not doing that. Oh, go to the PowerPoint. There you go. You got it. Perfect. You got it. Sorry about that. All right.
Good evening. I was just going to talk a little bit about the memorandum of understanding between the two unions, invite the union presidents to come up and share some thoughts on those. As you know, our HR director had left, so we've kind of divvied up some of those duties, and I'm overseeing that department too. So this is a big part of that process. Based on the Governor Brown's guidance on COVID-19 restrictions impacting K-12 education, we triggered sort of a change in working conditions for our unions. So we entered in negotiations with them, had some great conversations with our union presidents and their representatives, and came to a joint agreement. So I'm going to share with you some of the common themes in both of the agreements. Basically, everybody had a chance to be vaccinated or claim an exception. We did not turn down any exceptions, and I do not believe we lost any employees either through this process. Those who got an exception, basically one of the extra precautions for them was to not remove masks in buildings unless they're alone in the classroom, which actually applies to everyone, whether you're vaccinated or not. Not remove the mask and eat in the classroom when others are present. They had a choice to either enroll in a weekly testing program through OHA, and basically they held the information. We didn't collect that. We could ask if we wanted, or they could conduct a daily self-assessment and again maintain that document. So that was a choice, and that was based on feedback from our union members. Again, we want to make sure everybody is feeling honored in this process. And if absent due to an illness with one of the primary symptoms, they would have to show proof of a negative COVID test. The teachers union had requested access to their sick leave bank for their staff if they had COVID. So they wouldn't lose, so if they had like a positive test or if they were told to quarantine or had to take care of a sick child. So they basically are now able to give up to 10 days for that purpose. So the teachers don't lose their own sick time. Also, if they do get a vaccination or a booster, they could access another 2 days if they had an adverse effect to that without losing their own sick time. That's also for the classified staff as well. Both groups had a retention bonus. I think we talked about that in an executive session. So we did negotiate that with the union groups. The OSEA, their sick leave bank wasn't as robust as the teacher's sick leave bank. So $75,000 was put into their bank so that the employees could access that too, so they don't have to lose their sick leave. Some additional things for the teachers is if they were moved to a distance learning model, like let's say their class got quarantined due to an outbreak, they get a 1-day transition time to help plan for that, not having to roll into instruction the next day online. If the whole school closes due to a quarantine situation or we had to move to online learning, then there's 2 paid transition days for the whole staff to help that process. And I think that basically the total cost, there's also extra additional pay if secondary teachers are teaching 4 or more separate courses, and those aren't separate periods, those are different actual course titles. So it could include an online version as well. So if you taught Algebra 1 in person and also taught Algebra 1 online, that would count as 2 courses. Recognizing that takes for additional planning to teach both of them effectively. So they get a stipend of 0.17, I think, if they go 4 or more courses. And I think that about covers it. Total cost out of the ESSER funds, and this is why it's an action item. Usually the unions, we negotiate with the district, the unions vote on it, and it becomes MOU. But because it involved ESSER funds, we felt we needed to take it to the board. Total cost of that, about $325 to $350 would be a fair statement. So union presidents, I'd love if you could come up and share your thoughts.
Hi. So we, both parties have ratified our agreement on the effects of the Oregon Health Authority's COVID vaccine mandate. I'd like to express my appreciation as the president of OSDA Chapter 26 for all the hard work that went into the agreement. This agreement represents weeks of productive work at the bargaining table by our team as well as the district's tireless administrative staff. And we're grateful to the board, hopefully to ratify our agreement, which will provide some much needed added security for classified employees in this pandemic. Thanks.
When I heard of Governor Brown's vaccine mandate, my immediate thought was, we're going to lose teachers over this. I am extremely delighted that we were able to work out a package with the district where none of our teachers had to quit their jobs when the vaccine mandate came into effect. You've kept our teachers whole. You've prevented us from having to try to find new staff to fill holes that we wouldn't be able to fill. And this took a lot of work because we thought we would have this ironed out in August. We were meeting we met the day before the vaccine mandate rolled out. So this was a much longer and more drawn out process than we thought it would be. And we'd like to thank the district for continuing to meet with us well into October to get this ironed out. Thank you.
All good?
Yeah. Yeah, okay, open it up for board discussion. Go ahead.
I know a lot of work went into coming to agreements with these MOUs. I just have one question. Teachers may not remove their mask to eat in staff or classrooms while others are present. What does the teacher do in that case? You have to wait till people leave, that others leave the room, or do they go to their own classroom, or how?
If they had space in their own classroom, they could eat in their own classroom privately. If there was another space on campus, some of the campuses have isolated locations, they'd be able to eat. If they were in town, obviously, they could go to a local place, or if they live close to the school. Yeah. And I think when we got into those negotiations about that, it was really the thought process of how do we make sure everybody's protected, whether you're vaccinated or not. So even if you're not vaccinated, and I was vaccinated, I could give you COVID and not realize it. So the thought is, how do we protect everybody? You know, even someone who chooses not to have a vaccine in that process. And that's where we discussed that and came to that conclusion.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments on this? I guess one of my comments, I was very pleased to see that the exceptions for religious and medical worked out very reasonably. That was critical, and I think that it was a good ending for that, not losing any employees, because as I get it, we need every single man and woman that we have teaching. So that was great. Also, coming out of the executive session, you know, the board recognizes the challenges presented by the COVID mandates for masks, and it's a challenge for the students having to wear these masks, the teachers working in those conditions. So hence we went ahead and approved the demand bargain. So glad to hear it worked out well. Thank you, Tim, for your work on that.
Definitely.
So there is any further discussion on this topic?
I just wanted to thank everyone for the challenges that we're going through and all of your hard work and continuing hard work. We really appreciate you. Thank you.
So on the cover sheet, there are 2 motions requested. I didn't know if we can take them one at a time. If anyone wanted to make that first motion. I can do it.
To approve the vaccine requirement memorandum and of understanding between the district and the Oregon School Employees Association, Chapter 26.
A second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is that Christina's aye too?
Yes, I said aye.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you. Okay, that was one, and there's another.
I move to approve the vaccine requirement memorandum of understanding between the district and the North Bend Education Association.
I second.
I will second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and that is I move to approve vaccine requirement memorandum of understanding between the district and the North Bend Education Association. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye? Okay. Both those motions passed 4-0. Okay. Okay, good. Next item on the agenda, swimming collective sponsorship, action item, Mike Forrester.
Before I get into that, I want to let all of you know, and maybe you already do, we, just going back to our volleyball program for a minute, last 2 Saturdays ago, we've done breast cancer awareness games where we wore a pink jersey and talked a little bit about it at between games. But our coach this year, Summer Sawyer, this I think speaks volumes about who she is. She came from North Carolina where they always try to raise some money in the process. So her girls, some people in the community, lots of different people made donations. They had some fun little activities at their volleyball match. And the night that they did their breast cancer awareness game, they raised over $4,700 for Breeze Foundation, which is a local organization in town which helps women dealing with breast cancer or breast cancer awareness. So I just thought it was a phenomenal night for both our kids because they get to be a part of something like that, and for a great cause in town here locally. So props to them. So this collective sponsorship, I was here last year asking for the same thing. Last year our swim pool was shut down because of budget issues. This year our pool is shut down because they're going to start repairs. In fact, I think they've already started the repairs. But the repairs won't be done. Our swimming season starts November 15th, and the repairs won't be done until, I'm hearing, January 1st. That makes me nervous. I think our football field was supposed to be done on August 15th, and it got done on October 15th. So I'm a little bit nervous about that. But fortunately, the OSA allows us to do something called a collective sponsorship. Our students would be able to go over to Coos Bay, swim at Mingus, and they would do this. They'd be able to do it as, for the whole season if we needed to. We're hoping that isn't the case. But they would, the Marshville coach would lead the practices like she did last year. But when it came time for a swim meet, our kids would swim as separate teams. We don't even have the same schedule. Last year we had the same schedule. This year we don't have the same schedule. So at meets, our coaches are in charge of our kids, and we'll take care of that. So I need board approval. The OSA needs board approval before this can happen. Coos Bay also has to approve this, and I think that's on their board agenda, or on their items to discuss at their next board meeting as well. So we're hoping that you guys will support this.
Gotcha, thank you, Mike. Is one of the reasons this is needed, and I'm just thinking back to tennis when we looked at practicing together with Marshfield just to change up the competition, is it that if you practice together without this agreement, it counts as a match or a meet?
No, no.
Okay.
It's just us agreeing that we're going to have our kids together, practicing together. Some schools, like up in the valley, they use one facility, but there might be 3 teams. In swimming, it's really common. There'd be 3 teams in one place. They do the same type of thing, or they do a shared use facility. So anyway,
I think there's one other thing. When coaches from another school coach our kids, and then they transfer later, so if we don't do this agreement, and they do this without approval from the OSAA and our board, they would be ineligible. If those kids transfer between our schools, they would be ineligible to play for 1 calendar year because of it's kind of seen as they've been recruited and been coached by that team. So this is part of, we're in agreement that this is happening and no one's going to get in trouble. So that's the other part.
which of course we would never have happen.
Any further questions for Mike? All right.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mike. All right, there is a motion. I'll go ahead and and make the motion. I move to approve the collective sponsorship with Oregon School Activities Association between North Bend High School boys and girls swimming and Marshfield High School boys and girls swimming for the 2021 to 2022 school year.
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. That passes, have the 4 votes. Great. Thank you, Mike. Okay, next on the agenda is a statement, item 9, statement from North Bend School District Board of Directors regarding local control. Little background, there was a resolution involving local control and masks. Board met for a work session on the 21st of October. Some great discussion around both topics. We did not reach a consensus between the board on masks, but we did on local control. And at the end of that work session, it was decided that it'd be a collaborative effort on this wording between Spencer Gordon and myself. And so between Spencer and I, we collaborated on this statement, and I'll go ahead and read it. Statement of North Bend School Board of Directors, Local Control, October 27th, 2021. The North Bend School Board of Directors supports the Coos County Commissioners and the Coos County Sheriff, Craig Zaney, in their request for local control regarding public health and safety decisions. On August 1st, 2021, the Coos County Commissioners wrote a letter to Governor Brown expressing concerns about the mask mandate for K-12 through 12 schools for the 2021 to 2022 school year and requesting that these decisions be made at the local level. On the 27th of August, 2021, Coos County Sheriff Craig Zaney issued a letter that included the following statement: as your sheriff, I believe it is in the best interest of Coos County and the state of Oregon that these types of public health / safety decisions are made by local governments or by the individual themselves. As elected leaders of the North Bend School District, we seek the welfare of the children entrusted to the district and formally request a return of local control and decision-making regarding health and safety protocols to serve our community's specific needs. So,
This was the document that I wanted to have since spelling. It's Craig Zanni, Z-A-N-N-I. And I would like to have Christina be put in as Christina Simpson, vice co-chair, or co-chair. Please. Make those edits on that, please.
can do. So that was 2 N's in Zaney?
2 N's in Zanny.
Gotcha. Anything else? And did Christina have some comments to make?
I just wanted to put Christina as vice co-chair.
Oh, okay. Please,
Yeah,
yes.
second vice.
Yeah, thank you
second
for that correction.
Co-chair, whatever her position is. Please make that edit.
Yes.
Thank you. That was all.
Discussion, okay. With that, there will be, is there a motion to accept this statement?
Here, I'll go ahead and make this motion.
Okay, Christina has made a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second. Okay, we have a motion with a second. All in favor of the statement of the North Bend Local Board of Directors on Local Control, say aye.
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 Okay. That passes. We have 4-0 vote on that. Okay. Item 10, Mid-Columbia Annual Report. This is information, and I think we have Brian and Terry. Tammy, I'm sorry. I used to get keys to the bus, the sports bus from you. I ought to know better.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight. My name is Brian Schulberg. I'm with Mid-Columbia Bus, and first I'd like to introduce Tammy Hikas, who is our new manager for the operation here in North Bend. As we sat down in the board meeting tonight, I was asking her about who some of the individuals are, and she says, I don't know, I'll have to wait till I hear them speak. I only know them by voice. So as you get to know her, you'll find that Tammy has a wealth of information. She's been with North Bend and with Midco for 14 and a half years. She'll celebrate her 15th year next May. So we're excited to have her, and the drivers, the workforce is really pleased to have her, and that transition from a long time Debbie Slaughter has been pretty smooth, and the drivers have welcomed her in. We've also brought on a new dispatcher, Cheryl Johnson, who we stole from CCAT. And so she's fitting in well with the group, and then we are just about to finalize an offer on another staff position. This is a new position for us to help with some of our technologies that we've added into the district for this new contract. So we're excited to have them. Debbie thought that she was going to get away from us, but we've managed to hang on to her just a little bit. She does some consulting and helping with Tammy through the transition. So we get her for a few hours a week that she comes in, does some coaching and helps Tammy with those items that come up occasionally, but are significant when they do. So she's still around, though she's trying eagerly to move off into the sunset. So a few of the changes that we've had with this new contract is buses. We got 8 buses that came in this year. As with everything else COVID, nothing can be simple. So our final bus arrived this Tuesday, and it was actually, it left the manufacturing plant in July. The driver managed to total that bus on its way out here, and so we had to reorder, and the new one was finally delivered just Tuesday. So, but we're happy to report that the others are in place. The Wi-Fi has all been changed over for your travel buses so that kids can do their studies and those kind of things while they're traveling to their numerous events. The bus wrap is in process, trying to finalize that design. Mike Forrester's been a key and big part of that as we finalize a design that's suitable to the district. I met with those individuals today, and we're optimistic that that'll be done by the end of November, if not early December, depending on, once again, supply chain issues, if we can get the vinyl in a timely manner. GPS, our Zonar GPS has been installed on all of our equipment. So every bus has that equipment on it and tells us in real time where the bus is, what's happening with the bus, the speeds of the bus, when the door opens, numerous things, probably more data than we ever really wanted to know. And Tammy is going through training on that through a system called the ground traffic control that tells us and where she can access that data. As she gets a little more familiar, she felt a little uncomfortable to share that, but that will then be opened up to your campuses for your teams if they want to look at that. And that should help us with those kind of calls that say the bus never came, the bus is always running late, and it'll tell us when the buses are arriving at the campus. We can set up zones around so that it flags and tells us when that bus is arriving so that we know that they're on time or if we need to make other adjustments. We know that those reports are working. There's a few of them that we've already started to test, and periodically Tammy's email will get inundated with little factors. So we set some speed zones for different areas for the drivers to test it, and one of those was 5 miles an hour in the lot. That's our company policy. One day she had 15 different emails. So we've got a little bit of coaching to do on occasion when they're trying to hurry and get in or out. So additionally, with that GPS capability, we have a parent app that will go out, and parents will be able to then identify and know when the bus is within a few minutes proximity of their home, their dental office, their work, whatever they decide. And the flexibility of this is fantastic because they can choose where they want that, and they can choose when that alert will arrive. So it's feasible that a mom could say, put a zone around there, and it tells me 10 minutes when that bus is within 10 minutes of my home, and she can put another one that says, now it'll tell me again when I'm 5 minutes out, so that if she has little ones at home that she has to go out and meet the bus, that gives her a chance to get the jackets on and be ready for when that bus arrives at the bus stop. But that will be completely up to the parent as to where those limits are set. And then as the bus goes through, then it will ping that marker and it'll send it to them. It is also secure, so all we have is the student's first name, last initial, and their ID, and that parent is the only one that can access the information for their students. So it's got a lot of security to make sure that we're only giving that information to those who are authorized to get it. Once that's ready, then right now what we're working on is an accurate list of students, and so that a process that will update from Synergy, so that we don't miss any kids as they come in, as they make changes, and so those are more automated. Once those are ready, we have flyers that are already pre-printed. They're ready to go out with in both English and Spanish to the community, and we can launch that with the parents. It's a free app that they'll download. It takes just a few minutes as they download that app, put in their students' information, and then it will immediately, within 24 hours, it will start to ping for them on their notification.
It doesn't work because I put my grandson on there, and I just chose the bus, and it would tell me when he was getting closer. So it does work, and it's really nice.
So, in addition to the GPS and the parent app, we've also we're implementing routing software that will then help us to do scenarios and different things for the district to help identify that we're operating efficiently and dealing with the kids and the routes. This has been a little bit bigger of a challenge, as once again with Synergy, we're working with Joe to get the student information. We thought we had it worked out, but our initial download gave us 151,000 students. I didn't think your district had grown quite that much. The noise is we don't know if those are duplicates or students. Every student in the district has ever been in the district, and so we're trying to work with the company TransFinder, and Joe are working out, okay, where's that coming from and how do we get that down to a manageable number. In the meantime, we're geocoding students, which is simply a fancy way of saying that we're identifying the addresses on the map so that we can actually, the computer can find them and locate them as we create those routes. Once that's done, then you will see that. It really won't be very noticeable. It'll be more for drivers and then for planning as we work together to establish those routes. Tammy has been intimately involved with that. Cheryl has just started the training. We have consultants from TransFinder that are doing that training so that we get that done just right and we're not shortcutting anything. Once that's completed, then we'll move on and start to do the routing analysis that tells us if there's a better way to do it with fewer buses or less time, or it'll also allow us to do bell schedules, studies, and things that allow for you as a district to say, what if we move this area, or what if we move this area? How many kids are in what area? It will be able to tell us where all the kiddos are. On the people side, we're very pleased that we as well didn't lose any employees through the vaccine mandate, through the same education process, through the coaching, counseling, and everything. We were able to keep all of our employees. It has diminished the pool, same as you're experiencing as far as the number of applicants. I'm very pleased to tell you that we have, technically we have exactly the number of employees that we need, but we're still dealing with various quarantines and absences and medical issues, and so we are still seeking to hire 5 more people to minimize the impact on our daily operations. We were able to provide a significant wage increase to the drivers, as well as some retention bonuses to help keep them attached to the district. So we're very pleased to the start. While there were things that are happening that we wished weren't happening, during COVID, the one blessing was that student behavior had never been better. Of course, there was typically half the kids on the bus, but And now we're experiencing the exact opposite. We're having the same challenges you are. You know, those first through third graders, for many of them, it's the first time that they're on the bus, and the expectations and how do they sit and where do they sit, and then the masks. As much as they love that, it really exacerbates the situation. Same as in your classrooms. So, any questions for Tammy or I?
Well, I just want to add before you have some questions. This is last spring we went to request for proposal to evaluate, really to go out for bid. Mid-Columbia and a couple others submitted bids. So we really looked at, Ryan, there was needs as we assessed kind of our community administrators, some of those technology needs, saying, hey, we want to move in this direction for parents, and so that was all included in our request for proposal, as well as making sure we talked to transportation, athletics, making sure that those supports supported our athletics and other activities. And again, we've been with Midco for 15 years, and then they had they won also a very competitive bid process. There's neighboring districts at Midco doesn't serve this entire region, so very competitive bid process. Mid-Columbia did an excellent job, and we have a long-term relationship with them. And again, we felt like that was a great partnership moving forward, and we're excited about this new contract moving forward, and we think it'll serve this community in the long term. So I just want to acknowledge some of that. And we're excited about the new stuff, and we knew it wasn't going to be in place as we started the year. They were going to work on this. We knew there was technology hurdles to overcome, but we're excited to roll out with the parents. I think I saw a lot of parents nodding their heads, hey, yeah, when the bus shows up, if you have that notification, it will be great to know, hey, I need to get my kid out to the bus, or give a little warning. So we're excited about some of those. There's also a bunch of analytic data that I think, as we start to help monitor and oversee, we get complaints, and our principals, they'll tell us, like, the bus was 25 minutes late. We will now have the analytics to know exactly what time the bus was there. How long did the bus sit in front of the school? How long, how much are we saving on optimizing some routes? So we're excited about the future of this. We're also adding, I think there's some reports and things that we'll be getting more frequently from Mid-Columbia as we have, again, more access to data and more information. So we're excited about that. If we would have had the routing software as we went into the pandemic and hybrid, that alone was like this major undertaking that we pretty much, Mid-Columbia, and with the help of some of our team, had to do by hand. Looking up every address and trying to figure out where to do multiple bus runs. I think with this system, eventually we'd be able to plug in names and figure out how to get kids home. It's the same thing as we start to do after-school activities, and we know one of the barriers is about getting kids home that live in a variety of areas, to be able to plug all their addresses in, and we can get, here's an optimized route so that the kids aren't on the bus for 2 hours. So we know we want to keep that timeline short. So anyways, I wanted to make sure that acknowledge this partnership, and we look forward. We have a 5-year contract moving forward, and an opportunity to renew that, I think, in the final year of that.
Yeah, and now the video is not new, but yes. Yep. Yep. Every bus has a digital video camera. Yep.
Yeah, I think that parent app you described is a great thing. That's huge. I do have a bus driver friend, and I think it's a challenging job. We entrust our children, and when you have those children on the bus, you're responsible for those souls. And I want to thank you guys for the degree of professionalism your drivers demonstrate. So thank you for that.
Thank you for the presentation. The new technology is amazing. So the 8 new buses, does that replace all of our existing buses, or is that the process?
No, it'll be a process. So that started with those. There'll be a few more each throughout the life of the contract. The contract requires a maximum age and an average age, and so we'll be constantly in compliance. So that brought us into compliance for the initial rollout of the contract, and then over the course of the 5 years, there'll be a various number of replacements.
I think it's a total of 25 buses will be replaced over this 5-year period.
Yeah, so that doesn't include if there happens to be any growth or other sudden changes in needs. So then we'll accommodate that as it occurs.
You mentioned the coach. That's been upgraded. If you had a high school kid over the last couple of years, we had an older coach. It was having quite a few problems. My own son, it was on the freeway, broke down on a soccer match. So I got to hear it firsthand. They have I would say it's not newer, but it's new-ish.
Yep.
And again, they're putting a custom wrap. It'll be a Bulldog North Bend, Bulldog wrap. So they're excited about that.
Yeah, we're excited. It'll really sing about North Bend and who they are, who you are as you show up at the different competitions. So we're excited about having that. One of the challenges of getting that wrap is the better your teams do, the more the motor coach is gone. And so we've been working with Mike to try and find some time where that bus can be available so that we can get that wrap put on there.
Thank you so much. It sounds super complicated, but I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next up, item 11, budget update. Tim Kreider.
All right, first budget update for me and for you. If you got excited hearing about Christina talk about reteaching interest rates, I have a treat for you. So, your board cover page, it has a lot of information on it that I felt was important just to kind of start sharing with you to sort of build a common knowledge bank and vocabulary that we can all use as we go through the budget process together. So you do have a little information on the Q1 report, which runs July through September 30th. And that report is the one with the graphs on it. And it breaks down the general fund by revenues and expenditures. Our revenues are our money in, and the expenditures the money out. And this general fund is our primary operational fund of the district. So this pays for our payroll, our salaries, benefits, supplies, textbooks, and general operating expenses for pretty much everything. We do have grant money that comes in, and that money is kind of rolls on a time basis. You have it for so many years. General fund is something we use to plan for long-term outcomes for our students. Here you see the current year to date on one side of the report, and you see the prior year to date on the other side. So and it shows you, the revenues and expenditures kind of broken down, local revenues, local sources, intermediate state sources, and then expenditures kind of where the money's going. Salaries, associated payroll costs would be your benefits and whatnot. Purchase services, supplies, materials. So you can kind of get an idea of where we were last year at this time to where we are this year at this time. And it has also the percentage of the actual total year to date. So again, you can see kind of where we are as to where we were. If you look at local sources for revenues, for example, prior year to date at this time of the year, we had $86,000. This year we have $205,000. Now, that's higher because of the damage to the gym floor that was done by a water leak. So that was actually insurance money that came in to help pay for the replacement of that floor. So anytime you see something like this, and you'll start to see something like this in your packet even if I'm not presenting on it more on a monthly basis, but you'll have this, and you're always welcome to send me any questions you have on it. I'll be happy to get that information to you. As you look at this, you see purchase services. You can see on the graph below it's a little bit higher this year. And that was due to ORVA payment, and I'll talk to you a little bit about ORVA as I move through. Any questions on sort of this graph and where we are right now, year to date? And then I'll move in some of these other topics that are on the cover sheet. So, and if they come up at the end, just save them for the end. If you look at our revenue for state sources, on the current year to date, and our annual budget shows a revenue of $46 million, $46,700,000. That was our actual budgeted amount for this school year. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that at the end. I believe that that will change to our benefit. This is based on the state school fund. So the state school fund is our largest source of revenue. So you'll hear us talk about that, SSF or state school fund. And this is it's a real complex sort of school funding equalization formula. Basically, the state allocates a certain amount of money for education. Depending on how many kids are in your district, you each get a slice of the pie. So the more students in the state, smaller slice of the pie. The state school funding formula takes into account your local tax revenues and then allocates money per student. So this budget was created on a funding formula of $9.2 billion for the state, which the state actually ended up funding $9.3 billion. So there's going to be a little bit of revenue there that we'll be talking about later in a couple months. So we plan for allocation of about $8,800 per student. They then take that money and give you your average, then they look at your average daily membership. So your average daily membership are the students enrolled. And then they give you a weighted formula for extra things like poverty rates, students on IIPs, students in English learning programs, foster care. So you end up with this funding formula called your ADMW, your average daily membership weighted. And that gives you a total number of students they say we have, and then they multiply by that money per student. And that gives us our state school fund. And that's where that $46 million income comes from. So that's really important as we work through the budget process, that we're paying attention to where that is and where we think it's going to be in the next year and the year after that, to really plan for a stable environment for our students and our staff. Next in your packet, you will see, and you will get this monthly, whether I'm presenting or not, a list of payments that go out through our accounts payable. So this is forward-facing information to the public so we can, really be transparent about what kind of information is coming out or what kind of things we're paying for to help support our children. So as you go through there, again, as things pop up for you, if you have questions about them, again, let me know. I'll be happy to help. One of the big things on there that jumps out is the ORVA payment, which I believe, ORVA Charter School, $1.5 million. So we pay money to ORVA. What happens as we host this charter school? I ran out of time. So we host this charter school, ORVA. Okay. They also get money through the state school fund for their students. And we pass that money through our district to ORVA. And this is where their contract comes into play. How much do we pass through? Last year, we were passing through 95% of the state school fund money to ORVA, retaining 5% for our district to help not only provide oversight for ORVA, but also, it helps our district in general. Through a contract renegotiation last year, that pass-through went down to 93%. So we now retain 7%. And again, that provides us the ability to not only support our own students, but also support ORVA in their functioning, to make sure that they're following state laws and the reporting is correct, because we are ultimately responsible for that. Any questions on the ORVA payments? So we kind of base that on the estimates and set aside a certain amount that we think we're going to pay for the year. Later in the year, you'll see some adjustments made. We make an adjustment in January. We'll make another one in May based on their actual enrollments. But we pay them on their actual enrollment. And that actually is why you have the final sheet in there, which shows where we were September of last year to September of this year. Because I want to point out, ORVA had a significant decrease in enrollment. Last year in September, they were at 3,400 students. and this year they are at 2,000 at that time. So that is a big difference. And what we had planned in our budget was for them having about 3,000 students. So that's a shift in enrollment that we need to be aware of and monitor, but we'll be okay. The state school fund estimates, and this isn't in the report really, but it's important to know. The state school fund estimates are submitted 1 year for the following year, and our initial allocations of money come from that estimate. Well, what happened in the state is about 17,000 students are not enrolled in our state anymore. So statewide, we've lost 17,000 students. What that means is, for that pie analogy I talked about, getting your slice of the pie, less students, bigger slice of the pie per student. So what we did, along with a lot of other districts, is we asked the state to reopen those estimates, and we resubmitted our enrollment based on our actual numbers. Which, again, think about it kind of like hydraulics. Is why would you do that? Because you had this high number of kids times a certain dollar amount. Why would you give them a lower number? Because we ended up with more money. We're going to end up with more money per student, and it's going to balance out. In fact, I think, and I'm guessing, and we'll see this in the next couple months, we'll see about $800,000 extra in our budget. So what we're going to be doing over the next few months is looking at this extra money, looking at the budget planning from 9.2 to 9.3 billion, and a couple other sources of income, and we'll be presenting you with a supplemental budget so we can add that to our budget and plan on how we can best use that to support our students and staff. Okay.
Good job.
Thank you. Any questions? ORVA, yeah, Oregon Virtual Academy. So they're kind of an independent charter school, and they take enrollment from all over the state, and we host that district.
Yeah, I want to thank you for the report, and I do like the transparency of the check register, because you can see where every payment went for that month. That's great.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Tim while he says he's gone? Budget committee openings. Item 12.
Well, so there's not really action required. We're announcing our process to open 3 open positions. And we have again, very similar to the board. There's not zones. It's just position 1 through 7. We accept applications, and we'll be doing work in the next November, December to publicize that. We'll get a letter of interest. It's on the December agenda to review those and make selections for the budget committee. Yeah, we don't do an application. It is a letter of interest that we require. And I think we do reach out to our current people. So Ron Moore, Bob Dillard, Dean Olasky, I do want to appreciate their service to this district, to this committee. Again, they do a bunch of homework. There's a lot of extra work that this group does. We do appreciate it. We also encourage them. Oftentimes there really isn't term limits, so we ask them to apply if they're interested in serving on this committee. There might be maybe a maximum if someone else is in there three terms in a row. But again, that's not usually an issue for these folks. So we are usually happy to have some folks. So if anyone's listening or here, get a letter of interest in, and the board will look at that next month. I'll take any questions. Sherry also helps with this process. She's been doing it for a while.
Okay, thank you, Kevin.
Yep.
Okay, next up, we have curriculum performance overview for K through 5. Bruce Martin.
All right. That's yours, right?
Great, fantastic. 2 topics I'd like to talk about today, and it comes from a request I think the board has had. One is a little bit about the current textbooks we're using, curriculum we're using in the classrooms, and the other is about assessment data that we're using in lieu of the fact that we don't have state assessments out there. And I'd like to start with our curriculum, and I sent some information out in the board packet. Sorry it was late coming out, but I got the information request just recently as we did that. If we look at what you received in the packet, we'll look at the elementary one. We put together a detailed list of all the different areas and the curriculums related to those areas out there that we have adopted in the district and are currently using, and then the year that they were published or adopted in out there. And in the comment in the left-hand column are those curriculums that we have. The middle column is the state standards that they're tied to, and then the right-hand column is the next cycle for adoption that we have coming up as presented by the state in there. You can see in that, I have a hard time seeing it, this is pretty small on this screen, but you can see on there that 2022, this year, is the next adoption cycle that we have, and that's for our ELA curriculum, English Language Arts curriculum, both in the area of reading and writing on there. And we're currently starting that process. We started it a couple months ago, soliciting some input from our staff to begin that. After this year, and that by the way is our biggest adoption. It's the most costly adoption, and it's the most complicated adoption as we move forward. In 2023, you'll see that the math curriculum is up for adoption as well. We'll be implementing our ELA curriculum, and we may find that we may need to postpone the math curriculum adoption for a year, or may cycle that with a partial adoption at some grade levels, and then following year adoption at some other grade levels as we begin implementation of our ELA curriculum as we're doing that, depending upon our capacity to do that as we move forward in there. The state does allow us that opportunity to delay adoption for up to 2 years if we need to in there. 2024 science is an adoption year, 2025 health, and 2026 social studies. Those are all state adoption cycles that are on there. Again, I'm showing you the elementary curriculum. I presented in your packets the middle school and high school curriculum as well on there. A little bit about the process that we're using for the adoption. It's a rather complicated process in the fact that it's laid out with some certain steps on there that are kind of guided by what the state says that we need to do in that as we review the materials on there. We started laying the groundwork for that back in May when we started talking with staff members about folks that might want to pilot at the elementary level. The elementary curriculum when it comes to ELA and well, the reading and the math components of that is a much more complicated curriculum with lots of different components and lots of read-alongs, read-alouds, different materials, intervention materials that go along with it. So we want to make sure we actually get to use the curriculum in the classroom so that we see what they're telling us the curriculum is works with kids. So what we want to do is have folks that want to pilot that come forward, and we will. We put a proposal out to elementary staff, and we've had first through fifth grade teams come forward. 2 people per grade level typically come forward that would love to pilot those materials. One of the requirements we learned from our last English language arts adoption is we need to have those folks pilot all the materials so that they all get a fair shake as they do that. We're going to look at the materials, as you can see on this cycle. There's a textbook caravan coming out. The state has just approved the adopted list of materials for all the different grade levels. It'll be online before too long, and I think it will be out there during the textbook caravan for people to look at. And I think anybody's welcome to attend that textbook caravan. It's a virtual event. You just have to sign up for it, and I think it's on the ODE website as you do that. And it will preview the different materials at the different grade levels in there. And then from that, a team will get together and they will choose hopefully our top 2 or 3 choices, and then we will be able to pilot those in those classrooms that want to do that with a lot of input through the PLC team process, looking at those materials to make sure that they're effective in the classrooms as we move forward. And we're going to follow a set of state criteria as we do that. And each member of the team, they're going to commit some extra time. We've agreed to pay them some extra time to come together and really have a deep discussion about those materials to make sure that they're meeting the needs of our students as we move forward. Again, we make some recommendations put down from the piloting folks. They'll put down their pros and cons of the programs. They'll present it back out to the staff and others. We'll make that available for public comment, and everybody will have an opportunity that wants to see those materials. And then, we'll make a recommendation that's formulated from that, present it to the superintendent, and hopefully on this time frame, the end of May, be ready to purchase the materials so they're in the building for the following school year, and we can do some in-service with staff so we're completely ready to go next year. So that's the first phase of what we're doing, a little bit about the curriculum adoption and our current materials. Any questions on those as we're moving forward?
Yeah, Bruce, what's the time frame for public comment on that, on the textbook selection?
I don't think we have a specific comment, but we have a month or so in there, I think, that it's there. I think that's open, I think, at this point. I think what we need to do is finish our pilots, compile some data, have that data available so people can look at that. And then, when we present it, I think, to the teachers at that point, I think it would be available for public comment at the same time period.
We'll have it set up, the curriculum set up in an accessible place in the district for families to come in and review the curriculum, leave written comment or a digital QR code to provide some digital feedback to us.
That's what we've typically done. In an average year, we don't get that much comment, but we'd sure like to have the opportunity for public to come in and comment on it, and hope they do as we go forward.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, I'd like it to be well advertised, because that's a great opportunity for the public to review what's in the curriculum and have some input. So. Well,
and I think they should be able to look at the curriculum throughout the time. Once it becomes available, there's going to be a lot online. These companies put a lot of materials out. So there will be materials available. If somebody has an interest in looking at some of that, I think, there'll be materials available that they'll be able to look at even before that public comment time period, if somebody has that burning desire to do that.
Is this curriculum the stuff that's going to be in the board books for the Chromebooks for the kids, or is it actually hard copy type school
They'll
books
be
like
both.
we had when we were in school?
Yeah, that's one of the things that we really want to see at the elementary level. They need hard copies in their hands.
Yeah.
They do, and we want that rich material there. We'd also like to see a good balance between literature and nonfiction material in there. A little more heavy emphasis on that nonfiction material than what we currently have, as that's the real world information that's out there. And that's what we need to move a little bit more towards as we go. Not letting literature go, it's very important as well. But we need to make sure that we have a good balance in there as we're doing that. And I think that's where one of the things that our current curriculum in English Language Arts is missing is any type of electronic component in there. And a tie to it. Not that we should be all online and all computer-based, but there's no tie to it. It's virtually just that textbook, and that leaves us lacking with some current type of things. The world changes as we go through, and we need to have access to some of those things as we move forward. So we're hoping to be able to have some type of component in the new curriculum that addresses that. It's interesting, they said the end of October they were going to make the discussion, or make the manufacturer or textbook publishers available. Well, they must have just done it, because I had 2 phone calls today from these folks saying, hey, we're available, what do you need? So, they're out there soliciting our business as we move forward. Interesting enough, just to give you a little preview, if you looked at the list, there's about, I want to say 7 to 8 different curriculums available at each level, and they band them in K2, 3, 5, 6, 8, 9, 12. And then they do a very deep analysis into whether they meet the standards as they go through. So they have some exemplary programs that they said these meet all the standards. They have some programs that meet the majority of the standards, and then they have some that do not meet the standards out of those. So they've listed all of them on there for us. So it'll be exciting to move forward. I would say That's the one thing, having been in the buildings as principal for a long time, the one thing since 2008 was the last time we adopted it. We missed the last cycle. The financial crisis was at hand. We weren't able to adopt a new curriculum. And I tell you, at that time, back in 2015, they were ready for it at that time. And we're really ready for it now. We think we're going to see great results as we have some of the new materials that are out there have different modalities and different approaches to learning than what our current curriculum has. So I think we're excited about that. So that's the curriculum piece of that, and a little bit about what we have available currently and where we're headed. The next part is a little bit about assessment data, and I want to share some of that with you as we move forward. First thing, I want to just talk a little bit about assessments that we have. We're all in kind of a situation where we don't have the data. We've had to make decisions that we've had in the past. We've had that summative state assessment data previously that we could look at to kind of give us a good overview of how we're doing as one of those major things. And just to review real quickly, English language arts is a 3rd through 8th grade and 11th grade assessment that's given by the state. Smarter Balance is what it's often referred to. Math, the same thing, and it's given at both of those are given at the end of the year, 3rd through 8th and 11th grade. We have a science test that's a state administered or state given sponsored test. We actually administer it under some very strict conditions as we do that, and it's tied to the next generation science standards in there, 5th, 8th, and 11th grade. We have a kindergarten readiness. A lot of people didn't realize that when kindergartners come in, there's a readiness, a quick little test that, not really a test, but an inventory of what they know when they come into school. And then after about 6 weeks, there's a little behavior rating scale that's given. Were they ready to learn as they come in? We also have an ELPA test out there, English language proficiency, for those students that are English language learners out there. And then it's really not a state test, but a requirement that we have to collect work samples from students. The state requires us to do that in math, writing, and science. We typically do 3rd through 8th grade, and then we have an essential skills at the high school level that we use at times. Remember, the last data that we have available, the aggregate data that we have is 2018-19. That's the last test that we gave under the normal conditions. So we missed 1920 and 2021 was just a very small sampling as we did that. And the same thing for the work sample data. It was suspended during that time period as well. So that's the state assessment data. But that doesn't mean that's all we have. We have much more than that we collect with data, especially at the K-5 level and at the middle school. And we'll talk a little bit specifically about K-5 and then a little bit about middle school here too. District assessments that we have that we use as one of our main assessments for those early reading skills. It's a program called DIBBLES, the Dynamic Indicators of Basic Early Literacy Skills. It's a great program for assessing some of those kindergarten through 5th grade reading skills that you have to be a successful reader. We also have as a district assessment a STAR reading assessment, which is a nationally normed computer adapted test tied to the Common Core state standards in there. And then we have another assessment, the STAR Math assessment, very similar to STAR reading, but it assesses math. It's nationally normed and it's computer adaptive. They will level themselves based upon students' answers, correct or incorrect, as they go through. So it's fairly short in length. As assessments go, can be completed in as quickly as, I think the average time would be somewhere between 15 and 30 minutes for a student to do that. And those tests are given 3 times a year for benchmark assessments moving forward. Beyond that, we also have some other measures, as I think a lot of you are familiar with, the classroom-based assessments that we use as well. Curriculum, some of them come right out of the publishers that have developed those assessments in there. And sometimes our PLCs will work as a team to develop assessments, especially for a lot of our older curriculum. And that's been one of our real stretches at the elementary level is how do we develop current assessments on the new standards from the old reading series that we have. The assessments can be formative, and I think a lot of folks, we see a lot of formative assessments used in the classrooms, and those are what's used on a kind of on a daily basis to to drive instruction. Do I need to reteach? Do I need to remediate? Do I need to do the things in there? And they're quick little things typically. It might be an exit ticket they're doing. It could be a quick little problem solving. And the data may or may not be collected and you record it in the grade book, but it guides the teacher's instruction in there. And then of course we have those summative and the end of the unit and end of chapter test recorded in the grade book, shared with parents and students as they perform, and used to determine proficiency as they move forward. But what I'd like to focus on the next couple slides are those district assessments that we have in reading and in math. DIBELS, again, English language arts in there. It's some of the most current data that we have because it's just been collected. We did our benchmark assessment the fall of this year. And it's administered one-on-one. That's the beauty of that program is we get a student one-on-one and we can see where they're at. It's not just come in, we're going to give you a test and it's a written. No, it's one-on-one. It's developed. You sit down, develop a little relationship with the student, and then you'll test them usually in a small time section. There could be 2 or 3 sections they're tested on, and they usually the time tests are about a minute in length. And it gives a snapshot on how students are doing, related to where they should be in the progress on those individual areas. There is also, and we do that 3 times a year with kids. That's our benchmark testing with DIBELS. And then we do progress monitoring. Those kids that fall out, and fall out means that they aren't making the progress, are at the benchmark where we want to see. We do progress monitoring. We intensify instruction with them. We progress monitor to see if they're grasping those skills, and then we continually modify the instruction as we can to make sure we're meeting their needs as we go forward. DIBELS is tied to the 5 big ideas within reading: phonemic awareness, phonics, vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension. And it's got several measures that you use. It's not the same thing they do in kindergarten as they do in 5th grade. You do everything from letter recognition and first sound fluency in words, some of those precursor type of skills that kids need, to nonsense word fluency, and can they tell you what the sound that a B makes? Can they tell you what sound an A makes? Can they tell you what those sounds are? And then they have to be able to put those back together, and they recode them. Can they recode those and put them together into nonsense words? And some people, why are you doing nonsense words? Well, we want to know if kids understand how those sounds go together and form words. You might see a word on the test that they do would be NOP or not. They don't have any, sight word vocabulary for that, so they have to apply the skills they've learned about those sounds and be able to recode them. It gives us a good idea of where their strengths are and weaknesses and where we need to fill the gaps as you go through. Word reading fluency relates to those common words per grade level that kids have and should know for each grade level. And then oral reading fluency, of course, is the one we're probably all most familiar with. That's how many words can they read per minute and how accurate are they. And there's standards that are set up in this for each grade level as they move through. The last one we have on there, upper grades, it's called the MOUs. I don't know where they came up with the name, but it's vocabulary and comprehension. And it's a 3-minute test that gives you a pretty good idea. Do they understand grade level appropriate vocabulary, and can they use that in context so they get a little bit of comprehension as they go through. We get this data school-wide, district-wide, school-wide, classroom data, and individual student data. So we've got lots of different levels of the data as we move forward. And we use that data to make instructional decisions for students and classrooms as we're moving forward. So we can analyze data down to the strand level, see if a classroom has an issue at a certain area that kids need to have more instruction at, or individual students and where are their weaknesses and strengths so that we can target those as we move forward. We also have 2 other assessments that we use in here that are those district assessments. One is STAR Reading and one is STAR Math. Again, both of those are computer adapted, and they have a composite score that they come up with that are tied to the standards, and they're a pretty accurate predictor of academic achievement if kids spend the time on the program. You can tell usually because you get a report, and if their scores are way down, a lot of times the first thing we'll go to, or teams will go to teachers and we'll look at how long did they spend on the test. Oh, let's see, 2 minutes. obviously that's a factor in there. So we'll go back and we'll reset and we'll have them do, maybe with somebody sitting down and making sure that they spend the time on it so we get a better report. Well, we can get a detailed report in there and standards as well. Take a look at where strengths and weaknesses of classes are as well as individual students. And we have progress monitoring available as well as we move forward in that. Let's see, let's take a look at some data. This is the fall data for our elementary schools moving forward. There's 4 colors up there. The red color indicates kids that are intensive or have intensive needs in there, falling below the standard for what Dibbles has determined to be where they'd like to have them coming in. Yellow indicates a strategic need. They're closer to benchmark. They need a little boost to get them up to benchmark. Green is those kids at benchmark, and blue are those kids at or above benchmark typically. So if we look at the first line up here, this kindergarten line up here, you'll see that 68% of our kids are coming into us from kindergarten not having the basic skills that they need to have to start where we would hope they would be able to start. And I think some of that's a function, we've looked at that, some of that's a function that we just don't have the pre-K programs available in our area to provide some of those. We've got a Head Start program, but it serves a small percentage of the needs. So we see pretty much on a yearly basis, and that has been an area that we play catch up from day one with those incoming kindergarten students. We'll always see, I think it always appears to be more red at the beginning of the year as you come in. It just seems to be a summer lag. Even if they did pretty well in the previous year, there seems to be a lag as you start into the following year. So beginning of the year is usually a lot more red than we see as we move into the middle of the year and the end of the year. And the pandemic has had a major impact on that. Remember, a lot of these kids that come into first grade, we'd like to say they had a full year of instruction. They did, but they had a full year that wasn't a full day. And when those kids went home, they did some things at home and we provided materials, but unless they had an active, involved family that had the time to do it with them, they didn't spend the amount of time that they would have if they were in school all day moving forward. What we found out from this, the kids that were the greatest impacted seemed to be those kids in those younger grades, K1, 2. They were the ones that and the ones that were struggling across the board. They were the ones that typically had a harder time going home and doing things independently. Those kids that were close to benchmark or at benchmark or above could do a lot of the things independently. So that's some of the data that we've drawn from the reports. I've got a report on here from the previous year as well. And I want to tell you, when I show you that report, understand that this data is incomplete when we look at it, because we didn't test all the kids, and some of the kids we tested was via online. So we were testing them individually via distance learning, while the instructor was testing them from a computer here, and they were on their computer at home. And some of the kids, remember last year, never returned to us in person. We had quite a few kids that were distance learning all year long. Their results aren't always complete on here, and we don't have all the results. In fact, I've got Dana Cahill, principal out of North Bay. She's the principal out here, but was the Title I teacher last year, an interventionist out here for many years, and then a first grade teacher beyond that. She's going to share just a little bit about some of the data on here. But before she starts on it, just remember the red in kindergarten. Even though we had 68% red this year, last year I think it was 79% that were red coming into us. And as we proceeded through the year, those numbers, as you go across beginning benchmark test, middle of the year benchmark test, end of the year benchmark test. And I know this is a lot of data to absorb. I just finished this late yesterday. I will give it to Sherry when we're done and have her send it out to you so you have a copy of this PowerPoint when we're through. And you'll see that pretty much across the board, even during the pandemic, we saw scores start to decline, numbers of kids in that intensive range typically declined. Not as fast as we'd like by any means, but they did start to decline. Dana, you want to talk a little bit about some of the numbers in there?
I sure do. This is a pretty powerful slide because we have the beginning of the year data that we compare to the middle of the year and then again at the end of the year. And I want to draw attention to a few things about this specific data. First off, it is a composite score, meaning that all of the subset that kindergarten is tested in or assessed in is added up and given a score. And then those assessments would be different than what you may see given at 5th grade, naturally, because they are working on very different aspects of that reading cycle. When we look at the beginning of the year for 4th and 5th grade, that N equals is the number of students that were tested, and we can see that there were 9 students tested or 2 students tested. And I'd like to address why that was. In 4th and 5th grade, there are 2 measures that they are assessed in. One is an oral reading fluency, and so that gives us a word per minute, and it gives us their accuracy. So how many words did they read correctly in 1 minute? And the other measure that they're measured in is that MAIS, meaning that it's that comprehension piece. And while we went through great efforts, I think that anybody that was part of that could attest to that we made great efforts at the beginning of the year to assess all of our 5th graders in one of the components, which is the oral reading fluency. So this is over Zoom, this is using breakout rooms, this is meeting with all of those 4th and 5th graders. But because this is showing a composite score, while we did one of the assessments, we were not able to complete the comprehension piece online. And so we don't have, so while we do have oral reading fluency scores, that's not showing in this composite score. And we could show those oral reading fluency scores across. Now, when students came back in 4th and 5th grade, they came back in February. We had done an online oral reading fluency, and then when they came back in February, we were able to complete the MAIS, which is why we have composite data at the middle of the year and then again at the end of the year.
So for the, hey, one sec. In the beginning for 5th grade, that's all red, N equals 2, so that was only 2, that data sets, that's 2 people, so, and then, yeah, and same with 4th grade, N equals 9, that's just 9, but the other ones have a pretty significant sample size, so that's okay.
So this is Dibble's report that we would be able to give on an individual student, and what this is showing is those different subsets. This is an example from 2nd grade, and so we can see that this student was assessed in correct letter sounds, words recoded correctly, word reading fluency, and words correct. So these are some of the different scores that they're receiving. And this is actually showing data across their 2nd grade year. So this particular example of student has been assessed in August, they've been assessed again in December, and they've been again assessed in April. And there's a few things to take away from this slide. One is the black dot is where those students have actually scored, and then that gray line is that target zone, so where we would expect them to be at that time in the year. And you can see that for the majority of these assessments, that target zone actually increases across the school year, so that we would expect students to generally be reading this many correct letter sounds at this time in the year. It would bump up and it would bump up again. And we're able to give this type of report at an individual level. So this is showing where this particular sample student has scored in all of these different subsets at different times in the year. Bruce had mentioned that Dibbles we do 3 times annually. That means a benchmark. We do that for all students. And then if a student does receive progress monitoring, all of their data points for the progress monitoring would show up on this report as well. And I can give an example of that progress monitoring in the next slide, unless there's any questions about this slide. So here's another example example of an individual student. This is just a sample student. So what we see here is, again, we've got those gray bars that are showing where we would want that student to be at these times in the year. We can see that increasing across the 3 time periods in the year. And what this student has here is at the beginning of the year in September, that big dot was where that student initially scored in that subtest. So if we look at this very top rectangle here, that is how many words correct that student scored. At the beginning of the year, they were right around 40. And what this report does is it shows us where that student scored at the beginning of the year and what their aim line would need to be in order for them to meet benchmark at the end of the year. And as this student has data points entered into this system, it gives us all of their progress monitoring. The big dots are the benchmark periods, and it can show us if that student is scoring above their aim line. Those would be sort of either on or above would be their green dots there, showing us that they are above their aim line. That trajectory is looking like they're going to meet at the end of the year. Yellow is just right below their aim line. And then if we start to see these red dots, that's a good indication for us that we may need to consider changing the intervention. So this is a snapshot on, this is an individual snapshot on a student, and it will help us make instructional decisions for this individual student as we progress monitor them across the year. Any questions about that slide? Okay.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you. Just so you know, this is a fictitious student that was a sample on the site, so it's not a student we're putting up there in front of you. The thing that's interesting on this, and you notice on the first one up here especially how things stair-step up as you go. So while we're trying to move a student that may be intensive and may be at 60 words a minute, up to where they end at 120, 140 words a minute at the end of the year, the benchmark is raising at the same time. So we may get that student to go and make that benchmark at the end of that first time period, or maybe they make that benchmark just as they start into the middle trimester, but then the benchmark raises, and now it's the next level that they have to go. So we're constantly trying to close that gap through a variety of things, and we can talk about some of those things as we move forward. It's a great indicator. These reports go home to parents. They have a chance to see them. They're used by the teachers. They're used to develop an individual plan for students as they're moving forward in there. Questions on that as we go forward? A lot of information, I know. The next assessment we have is our STAR assessment. We'll go in and share some data with you from the STAR assessment. I just pulled this report off of the STAR site. It basically takes all 3 of our schools, Hillcrest, North Bay, and North Bend Middle School, that have assessment data in the system. And this is, again, from the fall of this year, so this is current assessment data, and shows where kids are in there. Currently in the area of reading, similar type of things with the color coding. Red are those kids, and I think it says there, needs urgent intervention. Yellow or gold would be those kids that require some intervention in there. Blue would be those kids that are kind of at benchmark. They're right there on the line. They could fall out a little bit if they don't stay where they need to be, but they're really kind of where they need to be at. And then a green are those rock solid kids in there moving forward. So that gives a breakdown of each individual school. Now, in these reports, you can get the similar type of data that we looked at within the Dibbles report, and you can even get more data. You can break this down by content standard or common core standards. Take a look at strengths of a classroom, take a look at needs of a classroom, needs of a grade level, and those things are done at different times during the year, and we'll talk about those in just a minute. That's our STAR reading test, 1st through 8th grade as we're doing that. Principals right now are preparing presentations. I know for the board that's going to be a school data profile and school goals that they have for individual buildings. So you're going to get some detailed analysis of each building as we move forward in those presentations a little bit later. STAR Math, very similar in there. You've got the 3 school breakdown in there. Same type of results as you come in there. The red, intensive, red, need the urgent intervention, Gold would be intensive or yellow, and then the blue, those kind of on the watch list, and green, those rock solid scores in there as you move forward. Again, we could get more data related to the standards and pull that out as well as we're moving forward. But the last slide I wanted to share with you today is what do we use the data for? And it's for a continuous improvement process and how we use it. Because I don't want you, data's only good if you use it. I mean, it can sit there a lot, but if you don't use it and you don't look at it and you don't make changes, then you're not going to get different results. And we know kids coming out of the pandemic have, you know, some big needs coming in there, and we want to make sure that we're addressing all of them as we're moving forward. We use the data in PLC grade level planning meetings. Teachers will sit down as a grade level team in a building, and they will look at their data for their grade level and for their classroom. And they'll be able to look at what are their needs. They write goals. Their goals are written on this data, and take a look at what can we do to improve, you know, and have students grow as we go through. We use it for our walk to read instructional groupings. We will target skills with target students that have like needs into instructional groups so that we can get them the instruction they need at the level they need to, so that we're really seeing the growth in the areas that they need to. We make sure we align our core to the needs that folks have, that individual students have in there. Grade levels will look at that and instructional strategies that might target specific deficits that are in there. Our Title I interventions, the ones that Dana ran and ran so well, the data is used to target those kids that really are struggling in there. And how do we get them, you know, the extra intervention they need, as well as, you know, those kids that have some learning disabilities. Data is used to help them perform in the areas they need to as well. We use school-wide data in the 100% meetings 3 times a year during our benchmark time period. What are our populations that are missing out on certain things? Where's our great growth at? And then what do we need to target for instructional strategies that could improve the scores across the board? So we look at that and what do we need to do, and we make some changes in what we're currently doing. The other thing we do is data team meetings. It says 6 weeks, but I would say it's more likely on a basis of 8 to 9 weeks, somewhere in there. But that's where we take a look at all those kids that are in that red area. What can we do, and how can we change the instruction for them to meet their needs? Is what we're doing working? Are we seeing the growth? Or do we need to do something a little bit different? It takes a lot of time, and we spend the time doing that. I mean, there's seems like a couple days every week is spent on looking at data and digging into the data in there. Student study team meetings is another way that we use the data as we go forward. We use that data in there to take a deeper dive into that, and not just this data, but this data will often lead us into looking at other data. You know, if they're really struggling reading, maybe it's a phonics screener they need to find out specific areas of letter sounds that they're dealing with, or blends, or diphthongs, digraphs, all that fancy terminology that goes along with reading, to make sure that we're targeting where their needs are. And again, family communication, it's not just the school that provides education, it takes all of us together, especially for those struggling readers. You know, it takes more than just the school day to do it. It takes practice at home. We send materials home. We work with parents on small strategies that they can work with their kids to help them as well. And of course, we use it for professional development. So we're using the data in a variety of sources as we're moving forward to make sure we're making those changes in there. It's a process that takes a lot of time, but it's well worth it, the results we see. Every student will learn to read. Every student will learn to do the math. They don't all learn at the same rate, and that's the hard part. It takes more time for some kids, and it takes intensive instruction for some kids to pick those skills up. But I have yet to see, I don't think there's very many kids I can remember in the 35 years I've been doing this that can't read. It may take them longer, and it may take them more practice, but they will get there. And that's our job, and we believe in it, and we need to use the data and continually do that. Anything you want to add? Or any questions?
Any questions?
Thank you.
And like I said, I'll share the PowerPoint with Sherry, and she'll get it out to you as well.
Yeah, appreciate you guys putting this together.
No problem. Anytime.
Okay, thank you very much, Dana and Bruce. We're now down to item 14, Oregon School Board Association training. This was an item that was brought up by Spencer Gordon. It was very good. He thought that the board would benefit from some training, and that's going to be something we'll look at doing. There is an OSBA offering on basic workshop, and really what it revolves around is best practices, the board's legal roles and responsibilities, what's found in state and board policy. So I know a number of board members, the 4 other board members who already attended that. Spencer's comment was he thought they would also benefit in attending it again. So the cost of this training is $525, and it would be a Zoom training, 2 to 3 hours. So this is for information only. Any comments from the board?
How much?
$525.
Per person?
No, for the whole schmear.
Okay, for all 7 of us?
Yeah, correct.
I just let you know, I know I have a report coming. Orva is requesting an extension of their leave, which will adjust our, on their contract. It's going to come at our next meeting, which would open up a couple opportunities for the work sessions. I think the January work session, which was the public hearing, would be available for training. And then I know I'm not sure on this November if we're going to have the committee work done in time for that November 18th work, but that might be another available time that's a scheduled time for me.
Okay. Moving on, item 15, board comments. I'll open it up to board members. Have at it.
Well, I would comment that I would, I don't object to item 14 at all, but I would like to maybe pursue other avenues other than Oregon School Board Association for that training. Just a comment.
Okay. Any other board comments? Any general, item 15, any board comments about any topic as we close out? 8:18 in the evening as the crowd grows silent? No comments, okay. All right, with that, there's some information. The next board work session's the 18th of November. Next board meeting the December 9th. With that, we'll go ahead and move to adjournment. We thank everyone for attending. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.